What does the Bible say about abortion? Is it murder? When does life begin? According to the World Health Organization, 73 million induced abortions take place every single year. If you can believe it, that's 3 in 10 of all pregnancies. The Guttmacher Institute reports that 74% of women who opt for an abortion do it because, quote-unquote, having a child would interfere with a woman's education, work, or ability to care for dependents. 73% stated that they could not afford a baby, and 48% mentioned that they did not want to be a single mother or that they were having relationship problems. Many think that the abortion debate comes down to when life begins. Now, in order to answer this question, we are not actually going to turn to the Bible right away. We are first going to examine the science. So a little bit of science. Once the sperm enters the egg, the genetic material contained within the sperm spreads out. A new membrane then forms around the genetic material, creating what is referred to as a male pronucleus. 23 chromosomes, the genetic material from the father, emerges from within this newly formed cell. Meanwhile, due to the sperm cell entering the egg, the female genetic material finishes dividing. The process results in the female pronucleus being formed. Like the male pronucleus, the female pronucleus also contains 23 chromosomes. As the male and female pronuclei form, thread-like material pull them towards each other. The chromosomes then join together, forming what's referred to as a zygote. Everything from gender to hair color is set at this very moment. The process of fertilization is now complete. In 9 months from this time, that zygote will be a fully formed human being. So the science is clear, the science is obvious that at that moment, when the egg becomes fertilized by the sperm and the zygote is formed, uninterrupted, that zygote will become a fully formed human being. So clearly, life then begins at conception. Also, take note that pregnancy tests can't even detect the presence of a zygote this early in the pregnancy. Detecting pregnancy is dependent on detecting the HCG hormone in the blood or urine of the mother, and that usually takes between 6 and 12 days after conception. So life is literally beginning before we even know it. So terminating the life of a zygote then is terminating human life itself. The abortion debate, therefore, is really not a debate over when life begins. The science is abundantly clear. The abortion debate is really one about when personhood begins. And the reason I say that is because we terminate other kinds of life and we don't really consider it too much. We terminate the life of plants. We don't think about it. We consume plants, so we terminate those lives before we eat the plants. But what about terminating the life of a human being? It really comes down to when does a person become a person? And for this, we will now turn to the Bible. The 139th Psalm in verse 16 says, "For you have possessed my reins. You have covered me from my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows right well. My substance was not hid from you. When I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth, your eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in your book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them." So here we see in the inspired word of God, the psalmist is referring to himself in the womb of his mother. So when he was writing this, he was referring to himself as already being a person in the womb. Now, the Bible doesn't specify exactly at which moment one becomes a person, but this verse alone is stating that personhood begins in the womb. And because we don't know exactly when personhood begins, then we must absolutely avoid abortion at all costs. The only case in which abortion would be acceptable is if it were to save the life of a mother. But these cases are extremely rare. Notice this quote from Alan Guttmacher, former president of Planned Parenthood. He said, "Today it is possible for almost any patient to be brought through pregnancy alive, unless she suffers from a fatal disease such as cancer or leukemia, and if so, abortion would be unlikely to prolong, much less save the life." Also notice the next following 2 Bible verses that actually mention that God himself is involved with forming every single human being in the womb. Isaiah 44 and verse 24, thus says the Eternal, your Redeemer, and he that formed you from the womb. I am the Eternal that makes all things, that stretches forth the heavens alone, that spreads abroad the earth by myself. And Job 31:15, did not he that made me in the womb make me, and did not one fashion us in the womb? Finally, note that there are examples in the Bible that show that God separated some individuals from their mother's wombs for a great purpose. Just imagine if the mothers of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and the Apostle Paul had decided to get an abortion. Isaiah 49:1, listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken you people from afar. The Eternal has called me from the womb. From the bowels of my mother has he made mention of my name. Jeremiah 1, verse 4, then the word of the Eternal came to me, saying, before I formed you in the belly I knew you, and before you came forth out of the womb I sanctified you, and I ordained you a prophet unto the nations. And Galatians 1, verse 15 to 16, but when it pleased God who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace to reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the heathen, immediately I conferred not with flesh and blood. Friends, we don't talk about opinions on the word of the kingdom. We bring you the word of God directly from the Bible. I encourage you, if you have struggled with this issue, if you have not been sure whether or not abortion is acceptable or not, go back to the Bible, look up these verses, and prove it for yourself. Under no circumstances whatsoever is abortion right in the eyes of God. God considers a person to be a person from the moment of conception. The building blocks of what that human being is to become are all set as soon as that sperm fertilizes the egg, and we are not to intervene in what God is doing. You may also want to listen to the last episode of The Word of the Kingdom, which was about the spirit and man. We talked a little bit about the amazing potential that mankind has and how man is different than the beasts. Also, make sure to check out the website for show notes and citations on this episode and previous episodes. And if you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do.